either way. It's scary either way. I mean, deep state, not deep state. Who runs the country? Those are my questions.
I like, to me though, like that whole, what Marlon's alluding to is like, oh, they got in and the swamp's much deeper and it could have national implications. So if you're telling me that exposing an international child pedophile sex trafficking ring is going to have national implications, let it have national implications and burn this mother effer down. That's what I'm telling right now. Like, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, if they're in that position, if everything they said was true prior and they got in and now they're afraid, they're cowards and they're treasonous. They should get hung. That's it. End of story. Like, I don't have any time for this anymore. Like, I'm 40. I'm going to be 45. You know, we talk about, you know, we celebrate the July 4th. We celebrate Memorial Day. We talk about honoring this country. I've seen post after post about defending this nation, about the oath they swore before God, you know. And when I look at the Constitution of the United States of America, you know, the thing that always gets missed in it is what those men pledged, right? What did they pledge? Those 56 guys that signed that document, what did they pledge? They pledged their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor, right? To uphold that document, to uphold this country, to lead this country down its best path. And if you get in there and it's too big and it's too scary, you're not the one, bro. Step down, or else you're going to be a treasonous. You're covering up for child sex traffickers. You're the worst of the worst. And that, again, explains to me the Bible verse, why cowards go first in the lake of fire, before the murderers, before the rapists, before the idolaters. It's the cowards, because without cowards, none of this happens. So we're covering up and allowing a huge child sex trafficking ring and people that did horrible things to children to go on. And that's why I'm saying it's easier for me to believe that they just lied to us in the media. But either way, they have no credibility with me whatsoever.
Look at how, when they were, before they got in their positions, how they were like, how adamant they were, how energetic they were. There's a list, just don't let it go. And then remember that interview where they both sat there and said, no, there's nothing there. You know, they were so docile at that point. They were like, oh no, there's nothing there. We looked, and you couldn't even lie right there. That you could see right through them that this was total BS. And they were trying to be so calm about it as not to erase our suspicions. But it was a complete and utter lie. You could tell by their faces. It was just a complete cover up on their part. And then that's the real question: is why is the cover up? You know, what is the deep state so strong, so deep that this, could have a great effect across the country? Yeah, it could. But like, to your point, John, what is the cost of it? Poor children that are human trafficked and stuff. I mean, when do we cause the line? Like we've always said, you look at the floods in Texas, right? And the poor children that were swept away. When children are involved, our hearts expand 100 times. So I don't care if it takes down the country, we can rebuild it. But don't let our children suffer from this. This is terrible that they would allow this to even happen, because of the furtherance of their own political careers and their futures. I mean, where does it end?
Well, here's the problem, I think, right? So, John, if you're right, well, not that you're right, but if we want, it would be easier, and I agree with you, that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino just cocked up this Fugazi story just to get some national attention. If that's the case, right? If that's the case, think about this. You never want to be, most people, right, don't want to be considered like a conspiracy theorist, right? Because then you become like an Alex Jones type, right? You believe everything's a conspiracy. And what do people think about conspiracy theorists? Most people say they're radicals, they're nuts, they're insane. So if that's the case, if we think, because Dan Bongino brought up conspiracy theories about how Epstein, there's a big plot behind this. He didn't kill himself. There's a lot of questions. Let's look at the security apparatus they had, the cameras that day. There's missing time on it. So he brought up a lot of conspiracy theories. if it's just a conspiracy theorist, then bottom line is we now promoted Dan Bongino, who's a nut radical conspiracy theorist, to the deputy director of FBI. So either way, it's a freaking disaster. That's what I'm saying. This is a mess. That's what we're saying. Either way, if he's right, they're holding back, and that hurts the country, right? And really, who's in power? It's elite, powerful people that hold the cards. Or if he's wrong and he was just lying, we put a radical nut in the second highest position in the FBI and our justice system in this country. Either way, I think it's a complete disaster. Marlon, do you agree? I mean, if either way, we lose.
Yeah, but so keep in mind, the word conspiracy was invented in the 1970s by the CIA. Okay, it was invented after the Warren Commission failed to quell public doubt about JFK's assassination. So, and also in that video that we saw, Glenn Beck mentioned Hoover in that. The Hoover that he was alluding to is J. Edgar Hoover, who ran the FBI for close to 50 years. And he basically had like files on everybody in DC. And what kept him there was because he had blackmail info on everybody in DC, you know? And he himself was also being blackmailed by the CIA because they knew that, he had certain he did certain things, let's just say, certain sexual related things. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is that is again, they don't want us talking about this. And there is that I actually believe I actually kind of understand now why Bongino and Kash Patel are doing this. And I'm glad I'm not in their position, because I couldn't go to sleep at night knowing that I'm not helping to end this issue and to solve this problem that we have. But you when you look at all the things this billionaire was invested in, again, I say a lot of them are connected to the money. And when you have billionaires, multiple billionaires with a lot of money to lose, the desperation comes into play. And considering what happened to JFK, you have to think that some of that weighs on their mind as well. That if you don't play ball with them, that these guys will be so desperate that they're going to do things that you're not going to like. So I think that plays a very strong part in what they're doing.
So then they're cowards. And they don't pledge their life, their fortune, or their sacred honor. They're full of crap. They don't deserve to be in the positions that they're going to be in. I'm sorry, if you're a cop and you're worried about, oh my God, they're going to come after me. They're going to come after my family. Turn your badge in. Now you're in charge of the nation's the number one law enforcement agency in the world, and you're worried about your own safety and the safety of your family. I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about it, but if you're not going to go ahead and do what needs to be done, you have no business being where you go back to podcasting and see you later. It's not that this job ain't for you, brother. That's it. Like, listen, I don't skydive. I'm afraid of heights. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I'm a skydiver. I'm not. My father was a paratrooper. He jumped out of planes into the jungle of Vietnam. I'm not him, bro. That dude was that. I'm not him. I don't have that type of testosterone. I don't have that type of my nutsack isn't as big as his, and I'm not going to 1 second pretend that I'm him. But like, I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, John, do you want to lead all the paratroopers? And we'll dump you guys wherever. We'll drop 6 of you off and as a ranger, and I'll drop 6 of you off anywhere in the world at any time. And you guys have this mission and you got 2 weeks to come back. They tell me that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not doing that. I got 2 kids. I got a wife. I'm this, I'm that. I'm not that guy, bro. But this is what, like, I don't care if that's what it is. I really don't care. I don't care if there's all these billionaires. I don't care who it is. I mean, look at what Rudy Giuliani did to take down the mafia in New York City at the time he did it. Jim Walden, too, was involved in those prosecutions. What those guys did was risk their life, dude. They put their family's life at risk. They went up against people that controlled New York City through murder. That's how they control New York City. That's how they got all the contracts. That's how they swayed politicians, judges, and the cops to not do anything to them through murder. And they went and they took that system head on and they won. And so, like, there's a couple of things here, right? One, I notice a huge shift in Pam Bondi, right? Where every MAGA influence is pushing for her head, which tells me that she's out. So if she winds up being out, in my opinion, then everything they said was legit, and now they're lying to us, and they're scapegoating Pam Bondi, right? And then my other thing is, and we spoke about this last week, what is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail for? Did she only traffic children to Jeffrey Epstein? Or what? Or was that all a big lie too? And we don't know anything about that. So we're sitting here and we're talking about all this, and all of this is speculation, by the way, right? Even everything the mainstream media has, because we don't know the facts around the case, because everything's confidential and everything's secret. And and people could say whatever. You're a conspiracy theorist. Okay. Then I'll lead. I'm okay if I'm a conspiracy theorist. I just trust what the FBI director and his deputy director told me for 3 years. So I guess you appointed conspiracy theorists to lead the nation's largest police department. Not largest, but a number one police agency. So I don't know. Weird, bro.
Like, here's the problem. And the problem is this. The problem is that either way, there is a lie. Is the lie before they were appointed as FBI director and deputy director of FBI, or is the lie now? One way or the other, there's a lie there. And I agree with you, John. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I spent my time, my young years in the Marine Corps. I spent the majority of my life in the police department. Being coined as the most complained cop, my life was on the line many times. I was getting death threats. I got notified from the police department numerous times. I was getting death threats, and they asked if I needed threat assessment. I said, no, absolutely not. I made sure I took care of my family. I did what I had to do to make sure they're safe. Absolutely not. My job was to keep the public safe. And if that means I put myself in harm's way, so be it. That's part of it. And especially that you're part of the strongest police force in the entire country. And that is the FBI, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire world, next to the Israeli Defense Force, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire country. And if you're safe, and if you're going to compromise your integrity for your safety, we got some major problems here. We got some major problems. Yes. Are you in the limelight? Are you a high-profile figure? I mean, I would assume that they knew that. They knew what they were barking before they got appointed. They had to know that they already put themselves in a position to receive opposition, maybe even death threats, because of the conspiracy theories and when they sounded the horn. I would think that their safety, John, Marlon, I'm curious what you think, and Rob, same thing. My argument is their safety was actually more at risk before they were appointed as the FBI director and the deputy director for sounding the horn on conspiracy theories. I would think their safety is actually less of a concern in the position that they are, because they have the weight of the FBI to actually protect themselves. I think even before that. And the bottom line is, I know you're shaking your head, but this is just my opinion. But the bottom line is, and that's why I was kidding around in the beginning, being sarcastic. This is a two-part story. We either owe Epstein and Maxwell an apology, or we have a huge problem here, and the whole country is spinning on its wheels. Marlon, I see you shaking your head. I'd love to hear from you, and especially this. That's the beauty of this. Opposition meets opportunity.
Yeah, I was shaking my head too, because here's the thing. I'm curious as to how much power each of them actually has in the FBI. Do they actually run the FBI, or is there some sort of administrator that's, a non-appointed lifelong administrator who's actually making the policy decisions over there? And if you don't agree with what he says, he's going to pick up the phone and call somebody above you, somebody even above the president. Because again, if the money players, the bankers, don't go along with a lot of what Trump is doing, then things don't happen. So if you don't like what that guy says, he picks up the phone, makes a phone call, and then it's going to happen. You're going to get a phone call from that person telling you better get this done. So I question how much power they have. And also, I'm going to bring up JFK again. Remember, JFK is the president of the United States of America. He had the Secret Service. Yet we're talking the top world leader, and he was still murdered. And to this day, we don't know the absolute truth regarding that. So I'm not sure being the director of the FBI actually means anything, you know. Now, I also want to point out that what's strange about this is something you need to think about is why would both sides of the aisle protect Epstein? It doesn't matter who you are. You think that if one side knows that the other side is so in bed with Epstein, they'd be like, okay, we got to expose this. We got him. We got a political advantage here. Let's expose him. That's not happening. And the question we need to ask is why? Why? It must be something very big behind that they don't want it exposed.
I think like Kash, right? Bongino, Bondi, not a lot of money. I know Bongino did pretty well as a podcaster. He did fairly well. But then you look at Musk. Now, Musk has a lot of money. Now, when Musk leaves, he tells everybody there's an Epstein list and that Trump's on it. So what is Patel? What is Don Bongino getting? What is Bondi getting? Excuse me, to keep their quiet, because if they do get pushed out, if Bondi does get pushed out and told to leave, there is something so big that they're going to be told, we're going to take care of you. You know, don't do this, don't do that, so that we can, you know, make sure that this list and this information never gets out. Because if she technically leaves and then she says no, there absolutely 100% was a list, that corroborates what Musk was saying, and now there's a whole nother question. So, like you said, Marlon, there's huge money involved, right? The donors, everybody else, who knows who's on that list, and who funds all these, political candidates and everything else, and the whole United States, really, to keep the economy going. So I think it absolutely 100% is a lot bigger than anything we've seen. And when people get into that position, they're probably told, hey, toe the line, tell them this, and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life.
You've just watched a clip from our live episode. Click the description to watch the full episode. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this.